Oh, that's good. Erev Tov. The parasha, it's written, Vayikra Moshe LaHoshea Binun Yehoshua. And we're all acquainted with the famous medrash that Rashi quotes, that what is Yehoshua? What did he do? He added a yud to his name of Hosea. By adding the yud, it became one of the names, Kaviyachal, of the Ribono Shel Olam, and it represented Ko Yoshiacha Me'atzat Meraglim. The Lord will help you that you won't fall into the trap of the Meraglim. So on the surface, is a very difficult medrash to understand. Does Moshe know in advance that the Meraglim are going to ruin the entire scenario? If he knows there's Atzas Meraglim, why does he send them? And that's one question. Second question, if adding a yud helps, so then why didn't he add a yud for all 12? That would have mitigated the entire event. And the third question is that we find that Hosea bin Nun was called Yehoshua much earlier. In the Parsha Bishalach, Moshe says to him, B'char lo anoshim v'tzevi lochei ba'amalek. It says, Vayachalosh Yehoshua es Amalek. So all of these issues are very problematic. Why? What is the Medrash trying to teach us here? Chazal teach us that Yehoshua was Nar Lo Yomish Min Ha'oel. He was the prime disciple of Moshe Rabbeinu. He did not leave him. And Chazal say that as long as Yehoshua was alive, it was as though Moshe was still alive. So Yehoshua was his most devoted Talmud. Now, many times in life, someone that's not related in a bloodline, nevertheless, can be closer than a family member. Such things happen. And therefore, here we have an example that Yehoshua bin Nun, we don't hear from Moshe's children. They, whatever their greatness, they did not inherit the mantle of leadership. And Yehoshua bin Nun, who is not a family member, is not a blood relative. He is Moshe, not only Moshe's successor, to a great extent, he's Moshe. And for another 40 years, the Jewish people benefit from that. Because I'll say all of the 40 years that Yehoshua led the Jewish people, it was as though Moshe led them. And therefore the troubles in Eretz Israel that the book of Shoftim record for us don't begin until after the passing of Yeshua. Because so long as Yeshua is there, Moshe is there, that was enough to create a positive Jewish society. So then what is the interpretation that we should give here? So I have often thought that the Torah is telling us here an important lesson in teaching, and that is, Vayikra Moshe LaHoshea binun Yehoshua. It's not that now he called him Yehoshua. It's not that now he added a yud. But over the entire period of time that Yehoshua was with Moshe, Moshe, so to speak, inoculated him that he would not fall into Atzas Meraglim. Moshe doesn't know the Meraglim are going to be angry. He doesn't know they're going to give a bad report. Had he known, he certainly would not have sent them. But Moshe knows there's such a thing in the world as Atzas Meraglim. Moshe knows that that danger exists. That people will come and say that good is bad and beautiful is ugly. There will be such a time. We live in such a time. You can't define anybody. They had one of the congressional hearings in the United States for the confirmation of a woman to become a federal judge. So one of the senators asked her, "Can you define a woman?" She could not. She refused. No such thing as a woman. Whatever you want to say, the woman is a woman. So that's Atzas Meraglim. You say what you want. You're not governed by facts. You're not governed by reality. Whatever you want. And Moshe, because of the fact that he was the teacher and the Rebbe of Yehoshua, and Yehoshua was Nar Lo Yomish Mitoch HaOel, was devoted to Moshe. So therefore he became immune to it. So when the Meraglim said no, Yehoshua said, "What are you talking about? Tova Oretz Mod Mod, it's good, it's great." Not because he realized it at that moment, but he was trained and equipped to be able to deal with the Atzas Meraglim. And to a great extent, that's why Jewish education was always person to person. I know we're doing this on Zoom, but ain't a doma Zoom to real. It was always person to person, Rebbe to Talmud, father to son. We find in the Torah, we don't find anywhere in the Torah a reference to have a school. We find education, Shinantam Lemonecha, but we don't find institutions. We only find people. And if we think about it in our experience in life, and we think about those teachers that had influence upon us, so it's rarely the school that had any influence or the yeshiva. It's the person. It's the Rebbe. If we're fortunate enough to have Rabbeim that can deal with us and can elevate us. So then the whole experience is wonderful. But you can go to the finest educational institution in the world, but if you don't have the right teacher and you don't have the right connection to the teacher, so it's a waste, more than a waste. All of us that exist in Jewish education know that I would say at least the majority of the cases of children who don't turn out as they should is simply the responsibility that they did not have the right teacher to touch them and inspire them. And therefore you look for other heroes. And many times those are not positive and they cause untold damage. So the Torah sets up for us this relationship with Moshe Rabbeinu and Yoshua ben Nun. And the Torah says this relationship, the devotion on both sides, the student that's nar lo yomish mitoch ha'oel, and the Rebbe that gives from his glory to his student. So that creates the continuity of Jewish life. That creates the ability to survive and prosper. But without that, so then the Atzas Meraglim is always present. And it's always dangerous. Now the Meraglim themselves, you see where the Jewish people had an excuse, so to speak, to follow them. Because they were the heads of the tribes. They were people of stature. So, and if they say, so then who am I to say differently? So it took Moshe to create backbone, so to speak, in Yoshua, to be able to say that 10 are wrong and I'm right, which is really the secret of being a Jew. You have to say the whole world is wrong. Yes, the whole world is wrong. That's the first lesson in Judaism. And that becomes the strength, the relationship. And that's what Chazal mean when they say, Kolev went to Kever Ovos, he went to Marsa Machpelah, he went to Hebron. So everybody can, if that's all it takes, is to visit a grave. So, you know. But what Chazal mean there is that Kolev saw what Avraham Avinu saw in Eretz Yisrael. He saw what Yitzchak saw. He saw what Yaakov, what the Imaho saw. He was able to glimpse that. And therefore that saved him also from Atzas Meraglim. No connection to the past. So then the present is far too confusing to be able to deal with it. So these are subtle lessons that the Medrash teaches us in this week's Parsha. But they're practical lessons as to how to deal with things and how to avoid the Atzas Meraglim and how individuals can rise to the occasion and eventually save an entire people from its own self-destruction. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash, Omer Ratzah Gadi Baruch Hu, Zakat says Israel, Aficha Chibra Lahem Torah Mitzvos, Shenem Adonai Chavei Zman Tzidko Yavil Torah V'Yadil.